Okay, toilet tank rebuild kit. These are available for 20 bucks at Home Depot, and a lot of people talk about negative results of being a handyman and then clients not liking you or retaliating, that sort of thing. This is basically what you get stuck with if clients really like you and don't trust other people in their house. They'd rather not call a regular plumber or have an unknown variable in the house. So I occasionally do plumbing, but it's not my area of expertise. So what we run into is a lot of times when a toilet stops working right, it's in the mechanical parts in the toilet tank. That's basically where all the mechanical stuff happens on a toilet. Most toilets in the United States are basically two large ceramic pieces and one smaller ceramic piece. The large one, of course, will be the bowl assembly, and then we've got the tank assembly. With the tank assembly, most of what's going on is going on inside. The functioning parts are these, and probably one of the more efficient ways to deal with it rather than a piecemeal replacement of stuff is just rebuild the whole thing. Now, this does not deal with the types of leaks that you might get down at the base of the toilet, but you can see how when this was installed in the house, it was only epoxied and puttied in. That's the part we really want to avoid messing with. And the way the toilets are designed, hopefully we never do have to mess with that. But on the uppers, fortunately it's the less nasty part of the toilet, although you still need to clean out, people piss and piss spray gets around in there, so wearing gloves, although I'm wearing gloves and handling my iPhone, so that's not, I gotta wash the iPhone off. So what will happen here is you gotta detach everything, get everything else apart. This one's a 3-bolt system, which is most common in the United States. And so we clean things off so that our gaskets get a reasonably decent seal. Now, there where that blackness is, I'm going to clean that again a little bit, and we'll get on to putting all of this stuff in. Something else I found, that the best way to drain these toilet tanks when you're getting them apart is to take the inlet valve out, stick a small trash can under there and catch all the water. Bucket's usually too big for that, so take it all apart from the bottom. Usually it's not even going to leak until you lift up on it because of this rubber bushing right here. So once that's out, we're going to take that all the way out, and then we always still have a little bit of water left in there, so we're going to keep that bucket handy to deal with that. Fortunately, there's a tub right here that can dump all this out. And this is tank water, so it's not going to be super nasty. We're going to keep that handy as we get the rest of this apart. I mean, it's unavoidable. You'll get some water on the floor, but not a hell of a lot. All right, first thing first, and unpacking and inventorying your package. These things come partially assembled, so you got to get the package partially apart. This little cardboard bushing will be in here, and if you don't take that out, you're going to think you've got leakage problems with the brand new toilet thing. So that goes away. Everything gets unthreaded from this. We're going to have a big nut type thing here. Although this comes with wrench, facets, you're pretty much just going to do this by hand. And then we've got this big rubberized gasket type thing, which is going to go like right here. So, and it's so soft that if you've got a little it goes right here. It's so soft if you've got some irregularity on that, it doesn't matter. It's just going to all press and compress into place. So we're going to get this thing attached to the toilet tank. So that's pretty much how that goes. And what you want to do is you want to look at the orientation on the assembled look in the instructions, at least in the fluidmaster kit. Let's see if we can set this up. And then here is how that goes. Basically, you're going to orient this to the rear and away from the filler area where that's going to go. Not exactly a precise science because you've got a flexible hose and a flexible chain that's going to be connecting those two. Okay, now one thing, Fluidmaster is a company that's been in business in the United States for a long time as far as toilet parts and all that goes. And something you can run into where I removed all the old parts, which really weren't that old. This entire building is less than 10 years old. But these things, sometimes they're threaded all the same, sometimes they're not. Now in this case, we've got two different styles of nuts. See how these are two different styles, but the thread and everything's the same. The thing is about this one is this little two-piece mechanism goes thumb tight. I kind of like that, so I might be reusing that on this one instead of the one that came in the kit, but you can go either way. The thing to look out for is this rubber bushing. It's going to be in your little bushing bag of small parts. This goes on before this goes in the tank because it's to seal up the plastic against the porcelain. Now when you're putting these things in and tightening everything down, obviously this is actually made to be done by hand. You don't really put a wrench on this. I like the way this is set a little wider to give you some leverage. This is when it actually comes with it. But what you do is you press inward to compress that rubber to get that last little bit of tightness on there. Otherwise you're going to run into the possibility of it loosening up when the rubber contracts a little bit. The other reason I favor the two-piece one is as I tighten it, this little piece here acts as a washer up against the toilet tank. Oh shit, bad time for a phone call. And so what happens is we get the washer side here and the nut side here. So as we tighten this, we're not going to have tension on this preventing us from getting that a little tighter again. I'm pressing in from this other side to compress that rubber bushing, make sure it's backed in all the way on those threads, and there's no serious looseness when I've tightened that down. The other thing is to look at the design here and make sure that we've had the orientation on these things relatively close to where it needs to be. Now remember, this side hangs off this side back of the toilet. This is the one that's going to have to line up with our bushing here. Next, we're going to be putting in the bolts, the tank bolts and screws. Now these, a lot of times, are going to come with a rubber bushing that goes between the tank and the base. Some people use them, some people don't. I prefer to use that. So we're going to, the other thing is, they may only come with a rubber bushing that goes on the inside. I prefer to have one that's also between the two units, but then that depends on the thickness of this thing and how that relates to everything else too. But we prefer to do it with the thing between the two units. Okay, so this is the way these things go. We're going to assume this little piece of plastic is the porcelain. So we're making kind of a sandwich situation here. The bolt head is at the very top. Then we've got a rubber bushing. Then we've got the porcelain, another rubber bushing. So there's rubber bushings on both sides of the porcelain. Okay, and then we've got a washer and a bolt. Now the washer is needed to be wide to give pressure on all this as we tighten it down. Now the top of this is just a screwdriver head, so I'm going to hold that with a Leatherman tool screwdriver as I hit it with a wrench from the underneath, and this one's a 9/16, which it was also a 9/16 to get it apart, so that's a relatively standard size that we're dealing with on those types of things. Here you'll see when it's set. Now they get held in place by these rubber bushings. They go on kind of tight, so that'll all get held in place until we set it down and of course I'll put the nut and the washer on from underneath. The rubber bushing though, it stays on there. That ends up between the two porcelain sub-assemblies. So if a microscopic black hole swallows up one of the other bolts, you can use one of the ones you took out. Usually in the kits they come a little bit over length. But if there's one you took out and it fit before, it'll fit again. I don't know what was going on with that. You know how it is, you find the parts after everything's together. But use the one that was least corroded, and then this bushing goes onto those threads. Make sure everything's tight and firm, and then we'll set this in place. Okay, don't know where that third bolt went, but with these in there, you can see it's kind of a tripod thing. So we tighten those just by holding it with a screwdriver at the top, and then this batch came with 1/2 inch nuts, half-inch things. The thread's all the same, so maybe I was wrong about it being a 9/16, but I've been tightening those with a 1/2 inch. We crank it down so it's good and firm here, but not deadly tight, okay? If we need to tighten it in the future, we can. If these things start to leak between a tank and a toilet bowl, you can tighten those a little bit, and a lot of times solve the problem. You can see how the orientation goes on the inside. This basically points to the rear and a little bit away from this. This thing kind of points to the side, inside, and then a little forward. Although it can rotate a little in there, I may have to loosen that nut underneath to do it. Now, this one's already been fitted with a very similar type of water line here. So the way the water line works, it's already got a bushing on there. It's already got a flat rubber thing here. We don't use a Teflon tape on that. We just simply reattach it and the rubber presses up in there. Now, if your kit comes with replacement rubber, go ahead and use it. This kit, however, did not come with replacement rubber. Okay, so here my miniature black hole theory is proven false. The kit comes with only 2 brass bolts. So if your toilet is the one which uses 3 of these, then you will need to use one of the ones that you remove from the toilet. So this one uses 3. They're both relatively corroded. Or all 3 are relatively corroded, but I'll try to use the least corroded of the 3, or I'll use one from the other toilet that we just did. Among the last things to go in will be this little filler hose. When it goes here, again, we're looking at how the orientation and everything works. It really, when you look at all this, it's really only going to go in one way. But this, in theory, could be pointed over here. It's just that your leverage as far as the little tank chain would work a certain way. So you get this little clip-on deal here. This can go right here, and then the little hose just presses onto that. Now you can see how that sticks up, right? Now if you're dealing with, let's say, some kind of a non-standard toilet situation or small tank toilet, that may stick up too high. The way the lid is on this, there's a little clearance under the lid, so we're not having to trim this off. In the instructions, there is some stuff about trimming this off, possibly, depending on the design of toilet you have. The other thing we're going to do, once we start filling with water and everything, is working this little knob, little thing here with a screwdriver to adjust the float, the shutoff, up and down. That is, to adjust the amount of water that you're going to use in this. Now, if you're doing those European half-gallon flush style toilets, it's almost a wipe one, flush one situation. So when you adjust this according to how high you want this thing to be, that's all personal preference on it. I like to leave this stuff on the factory defaults to do all of the initial testing though. Now the handle assembly is reverse threaded, and so I took that nut off. There's also a square thing here, relatively industry standard, that corresponds to the square hole here. And that's just to give it some leverage for the return point and the pivot point here. Now what you're also going to see is some little chain detent spots here. Now we're going to pop this off. Remember, there was a little cardboard bushing to remove. That's been removed, so we know that's going to seal up. Now if we just hook this to here, the traditional way, you may not get enough reach to lift that up. So what we're going to do is we're going to secure this in place and then play around with the chain length on this in order to have the length of pull and level of flush that we're looking for. Okay, so probably the better way to set this is just to double that chain back on that little paper clip looking thing. And then at the tip of this, and then make sure you've got enough range of movement that when it's in a relaxed position, that thing seals up on its own, and when it's in a lifted position, you're pretty well fully lifted without having to go, where this would bump up past the point of even here. So at this point, we're ready to turn on the water and start testing. Okay, so as it's refilling, this is the second flush. I did one without the camera turned on, leaving this all at the factory default settings as far as the float goes. Not really messing with anything else on that. You can see how that filler system works. And then drying my hands off the paper towel, feeling underneath for any dampness or moistness around these screws and bolts. And it's really critical to do this right initially at the installation so that you can detect any moisture down there, dry it off, check for moisture, because a lot of times when you have cold water in a hot room in a humid situation, you're going to have condensation around the toilet that somebody would mistake for a leak. So we want to check all this right away and then do it while we're still here. But you know, if something here loosens up, it's usually just a matter of tightening the bolts now, or the nuts underneath on the 3 bolts. Now, on the ones that I took off, they were 9/16. The ones that I put on were 1/2 inch, but the core was the same, and I think that's a 1/4 inch coarse thread is what's on the core of that. You can see that because the kit only comes with 2 of those brass bolts, we need to go through the ones we're taking off and use whichever ones appear to be in the best shape. That's basically how that goes. And the one that I took off only had the rubber bushing washers going inside the tank. There was no rubber bushing washer between the tank and the bowl assembly. But on this kit, it comes with the extra washers to do that. So we definitely want to do that when we're doing the installation. We tighten everything down so it's good and firm. Everything's working right here, so I'm going to put the lid back on, and hopefully you've enjoyed the video a hell of a lot more than I enjoyed making it, which I didn't. But plumbing is one of the things sometimes I get called to do, and I'll do what the people ask. I just don't like to volunteer for plumbing.